Yo, so we just got our annual fill of a Dainsleif quest, so that means more lore, and these reviews gave way more insight to the greater world beyond Teyvat, so I'll try and recap new information that we learned and what it can mean for the current characters. So yeah, let's go over version 3.6's newest Archon quest, Chapter 3, Act 6, Caribert, which I think is interesting since it's the name of one of the more minor characters in this quest, but I'll talk about it more later on. In general, the theme of fate comes up many times throughout the quest, so I'll try to put some emphasis on that throughout this video. Interestingly, we're in Sumeru now, and not Inazuma. Dainsleif has so far shown up in Mondstadt, Liyue, and now Sumeru, but not Inazuma, so I wonder when we'll see him in Inazuma. It could be if Hoyoverse wanted to expand on the Dark Sea lore that's next to Inazuma, or even abyssal activity in the area, since really I don't think we've seen too much abyss involvement in Inazuma so far. Anyways, I digress. We're pretty much just chilling in Sumeru after having saved Nahida and Scaramouche, or Wanderer now, in the last Archon quest. A local merchant gives us a letter from Kaeya, inviting us to get some drinks with him at the Defark Tavern. Kaeya's letter has the first instance of fate, where he thinks this must be a fateful encounter that they're meeting in Sumeru of all places. Especially funny to say since he likely wrote the letter while a little drunk, since the letter is wine-scented. Definitely something he would do. I also like how he calls himself the trusty buddy, given his background and what happens next. We head over to the tavern and Kaeya tells us he's studying the alcohol industry in Sumeru, which I think is interesting as I'm not aware of any recent changes or innovations with Sumeru alcohol. Anyways, time for the lore drops. Kaeya tells us more about his background in the game now, where literally Khaenri'ah is located underground somewhere near Sumeru, which is a big plot point because it seems to connect a lot of dots together. Since I feel that Sumeru can be considered a central nation in Teyvat, given that it hosts Irminsul, one of the most important aspects of Teyvat. Additionally, it's right by the chasm where last we saw Dainsleif had a bunch of Abyss Order activities, such as how Hilichurls and Khaenri'ah people are so drawn to it. Khaenri'ah being so close to Irminsul could be pretty thematic because all the hidden knowledge and technology from Khaenri'ah is something that the Nation of Knowledge would love to know. As a matter of fact, the supergiant ruin guards we've investigated in the recent world quests have only shown up in Sumeru so far. I just think it's super cool that Khaenri'ah is closest to Sumeru. Kaeya also tells us that he cares less and less about his origins in Khaenri'ah as time goes on, but I feel that this contradicts what we know of his character story so far. From his character stories, there's a big emphasis on how Kaeya feels conflicted between his past, being called Khaenri'ah's last hope by his biological father, and how he was treated so well in Mondstadt by his adoptive father, Crepus, Diluc's father. Kaeya received his vision because of this guilt, and to this day, one way that he views his vision is that it's a reminder of this burden of being Khaenri'ah's last hope, and we don't know what that means right now. But all in all, I think Kaeya's past will definitely be something that he'll have to confront himself, especially because after Dainsleif joins us, he reveals that Kaeya's ancestors, the Alberich clan, founded the Abyss Order. Also, it's a cool detail that Dain orders a one death afternoon, which happens to be Kaeya's favorite drink. Anyways, Kaeya conveniently leaves after this initial discussion about the Abyss Order, so unfortunately we'll have to wait for more of his lore. Dain does bring up if someone can really be unaffected by their past, and I think that the answer is no. And this is a common theme that's echoed throughout Genshin's own characters, as well as most other stories out there, and even in real life. The common attitude towards this question is that while someone is generally always affected by their past in some way, it doesn't have to hold them down, and they can use it to grow and move forward in life. And I'm sure the same is going to happen for both Kaeya and Dainsleif's character arcs. I love the interaction between Kaeya and Dainsleif, and I hope we get more in the future, because they're just throwing out Khaenri'ah terms and lore like nobody's business. Before continuing the story discussion, I wanted to note quickly that it's cool how Dainsleif has a comedic moment, wanting to finish his drink before heading out, which makes me feel like he's mellowed out a bit after the chasm incident. where he had his heartfelt moment with Halfdan. I kind of interpret it as a sign that he has more hope now than before. Dainsleif is here to investigate the Loom of Fate, which is the operation being carried out by the Abyss Order, and it's also the name of the Traveler's final character story. We head out to a small abandoned home in Gonda Hill where Dane and our twin had once traveled to, and where the twin first mentioned the Loom of Fate to Dane. Inside the home, there's a broken mirror which I thought looked similar to a vision shell, specifically to Sumeru's vision shell shape, but it might just be a stretch that I'm making here. Dane goes out to investigate ley lines, and Paimon gives some introspective thoughts here, asking the traveler about how their adventures with their twin was like, and that Paimon also hints that she too knows the feeling of being separated from something or someone close to her, which I think can be a story point later on. So, into the flashback as the traveler falls asleep. As we later find out, the traveler is pretty much just reliving the memories of their twin. As we later find out, the traveler is pretty much just seeing the past memories of their twin, and we meet a Khaenri'ah man named Eide under the Curse of Immortality, and his half-Khaenri'ah son, Caribert, who has turned into a Hilichurl. Eide's immortality curse has affected him so much to the point where he speaks with so much anxiety and aggression, as well as contempt, which kind of highlights how strong Dane is at handling the curse, since Dane is much more calm compared to Eide. It's revealed that after the Cataclysm, full-blooded Khaenri'ahs got cursed with immortality, while non-full-bloods were the ones that turned into monsters. Eide is trying to cure his son's curse, attempting to use taboo medicine to do so. It's a pretty sus ingredient because he hides how he grows the strange mushrooms, and monsters are attracted to the field. The taboo medicine doesn't work, and he curses the gods for being so merciless, and before trying to make another dose, we follow Hilichurl into an unknown sanctuary near the border between the chasm and Sumeru. The Hilichurls in here are bowing, as if praising some deity. As we journey more in, a Cryo Abyss Herald appears, the first that we've seen. The traveler makes an interesting note that this herald doesn't look like someone from the Abyss Order, which in hindsight makes sense because these memories are prior to the founding of the Abyss Order. The herald comments that fate didn't grant them permission inside, so that's another instance of fate playing a role here. I also just want to say that I'm a huge fan of the Abyss Herald and Lector designs, and they look and sound super cool and intimidating. After we defeat the Herald, we see the first instance of Eide's origin with the Abyss Order, where he's in awe of it, which later is emphasized at how much he admires the Abyss itself. We find something very similar to the defiled statue of the Seven, where Eide also bows to it alongside other Hilichurls, where I feel shows a visual dissonance, since earlier Eide was raving about hating the gods, and yet here he is now bowing to some deity. There's a voice here describing itself as a sinner, which I think we can interpret as being an Abyss sinner, which is pretty fitting because of how the Abyss is interpreted as the antithesis of the gods. It recognizes Eide's eventual fate, enticing him to become a transcendent being, to rise above the fate that was given to him by the gods, and grant some abyssal power to him, to which Eide happily obliges. After we get back to Caribert, we give him the second dose of medicine, which is fascinating because somehow a Hilichurl is able to regain consciousness of their past selves now. This pretty much introduces the idea that we can do this for all of the people that turned into monsters. But at what cost? It's not exactly clear to me what had helped Caribert regain consciousness. Was it the second dose of taboo medicine, or was it because Eide received power from the Abyss? It's likely the latter to me, that while the abyssal power helped Caribert, the side effect that Caribert later goes through is the price to pay. Caribert goes through too much pain, and it looks like he had to take off the mask in order to help combat the power, likely resulting in some terrible fate, maybe something worse than death. Which actually makes me think of, is this what the Abyss Order was trying to do back in the chasm? Afterwards, Eide reveals that his real name is Chlothar Alberich, the founder of the Abyss Order. It's unclear what happened to Caribert, but Chlothar suggests that the power of the Abyss allowed Caribert to weave his own destiny, becoming the first Loom of Fate. What this suggests is that the power of the Abyss can allow someone to control their own fate, but at a huge price. To me, I see this as the game telling us that in order to combat the gods, we need to be able to control our own fate, and that's why the Abyss Order exists, they want to utilize the power of the Abyss to break the control that the gods have over their own fate. It ties back more into visions, where visions can be seen as gods keeping an eye on someone's fate. So this operation called the Loom of Fate is related to utilizing abyssal power at a grand scale to combat the powers of the gods. The Abyss Order wants to revive Khaenri'ah, and so a direction the story could go is by using the Loom of Fate to try and rewrite the past, I guess, which also relates to what we saw with Irminsul in the past Archon quest. Now, this isn't something I'd want to happen, but I'm slightly concerned it could be, since, as I expressed in my previous Archon video, I wasn't a fan of how erasing the past was used with regards to the story and Scaramouche. I don't think that's what would happen here. It could actually make more sense that the Loom of Fate operation is trying to get all the current Hilichurls and monsters and to cure their curse, getting their consciousness back, which in a sense is reviving Khaenri'ah because the people would have their senses back. So I think that Weaving's one fate could just mean not letting the gods influence our own fate. Anyways, back to Chlothar. He pretty much confirms that he's talking to her twin. Based on his dialogue, it seems that he's meeting the twin again after the twin had initially rejected the Abyss, but after the twins' travels through Teyvat, they're being convinced by Chlothar that the power of the Abyss is needed for change, for Khaenri'ah's revival. And this right here could be the point at which the twin decided to become the prince or princess of the Abyss Order, believing that the power of the Abyss is something that they need for their goals to fight against the gods. We're back to the present now with Dain and Paimon. It looks like the Traveler went through these memories because of the nearby ley lines being tampered by the Abyss Order. The Traveler tells Dain and Paimon what they saw, and Dain says that Chlothar had disappeared 100 years after finding the Abyss Order, due to the torment from the immortality curse. And after we find two skeletons in the field, it's implied that one of them is Clothar's. Regarding the female skeleton, my first thought is that it could be Clothar's wife, Caribert's mother, because I think he likely wanted to be buried by his wife's side. So maybe that's related to why the strange mushroom helped Caribert's condition? The name of this Archon quest is Caribert, and while Caribert was a minor character, I think he'll show up again because he was the first Loom of Fate. Finally, before the end of the quest, Dainsleif insists that we separate because there's a mysterious he that could have seen the Traveler, implying it would be dangerous if he knew that the Traveler was able to see the memories. The closest connection I have as to who he is definitely that voice of the deity that we saw in the underground sanctuary, whom I personally think is the will of the Abyss. I'm sure next year in Fontaine or wherever we meet Dain again, he'll confirm and explain more. Really interesting stuff, and that pretty much concludes the Archon quest. Overall, even though we didn't interact with Kaeya and Dainsleif as much, I still like this Archon quest because of the lore reveals, including Kaeya's connections with Khaenri'ah, the twins' Loom of Fate operation, the origins of the Abyss Order, and just more details into the Abyss itself. That being said, I think this quest left us with more questions than answers, but that's part of why we'll tune in again for the future quests. In summary, we'll definitely see more of Kaeya's character and how he'll deal with his past, especially since his ancestor founded the Abyss Order. It's implied that there's a way to cure the curse from the gods, so this is progress for Dainsleif's character. Chlothar, the founder of the Abyss Order, is implied to be dead now, but likely his son Caribert will play a role in the future, in tandem with the Traveler's sibling in their Loom of Fate operation. There's more elaboration on the Abyss itself, and there's some higher order being granting abyssal powers that can help combat the gods. As Nahida once said, fate is the ultimate knowledge. So yeah, those were my thoughts on this Archon quest. Always a pleasure to see Dainsleif again, and more lore reveals are always fun. That'll be it for this video, and feel free to subscribe for more. So yeah, thank you for watching this, and until next time, take care. See ya.
He is Caribert, my illegitimate son.